I'll go ahead and share my screen. Welcome to the OSCAL-Compass community meeting. It is July 16th. I've added the notes in the chat for everyone to reference. Please let me know if you don't see it or you need me to repost. Go ahead and do the intro script real quick. A reminder to everyone that this meeting is being recorded and will be shared publicly on our YouTube channel. Your participation in these meetings is an agreement to abide by the OSCAL-Compass community code of conduct, and that can be found in our community repo. If everyone could please add their name to the attendee list for today's date, and then add any topics as well, I would very much appreciate it. Let's see if I can find it up here. There it is. Also, if there's anybody who is newly joining and is comfortable with introducing themselves, please come off mute and just state your name and your interest in OSCAL-Compass.
My name is Rob Sherwood. I work with GSA and other federal agencies. I'm actually a sole proprietor consultant. I primarily focus in the area of PKI, which obviously involves a lot of compliance verification. And my interest in OSCAL is primarily to see how it would be possible to apply the OSCAL standards in the context of federal PKI. It's something I've been working on and thinking about for a minute.
All right, welcome, Rob. So I think we can go ahead and just get started on a few community updates. One thing I would like to touch on is the transition of our project roadmap. For anyone who is not familiar with this issue on GitHub, it has served as our project roadmap for the last few months. And right now we're transitioning to using a GitHub project to make the roadmap items a bit easier to find and to allow more collaboration on the roadmap items themselves. So this is just something I wanted to share with the group in case you have any questions on roadmap items, you want to give your input on roadmap items, or you want to add new roadmap items. The place to look for them is our Trestle roadmap project. And we are currently working on a roadmap MD file, which will, I'm sorry, let me get to that issue, which will talk about how to get involved, how to add items, and where to go to get item updates, which would be this call. I will pause here for any questions or concerns or needing me to expand on anything. All right, I think we can move on. Another announcement, I just wanted everyone to be aware that we are currently working on the CNCF onboarding process for this project. So just be on the lookout for changes to our code of conduct and changes to our project governance. If you want to track where these changes are happening or what tasks we're completing, you can look at this milestone task on our community repo. If you have any questions, feel free to open a discussion or comment on any of the issues. Or of course, here, you can discuss them here. All right, I think we can move on to the last update item. We have a new release. I noticed that Alejandro was not able to be on the call today. Is there anyone here from the maintainers group who can talk about the new release?
Yeah, Jen, I can just quickly mention. So there were a couple of bug fixes and security updates that were required on an urgent basis. So that went over here in the new release. Mainly, it's not much of a change. There were a couple of updates on the pipeline, the GitHub pipeline that we have built that are going there, and some feature updates on basically adding properties through YAML header for SSP Markdown that we're working on. So not much of a change, but yeah, you can, as Jen is presenting here, right? You can look at what are the changes have gone here. There are a few simple ones only, and nothing major as such specifically. The only one is on the YAML header for adding additional properties in the SSP. The rest all are fixes and minor updates. Yeah.
Thanks, Vikas. Any questions from the group? All right. I think that that is all we had for pre-planned topics. There are some pull requests we can go through, but before I do that, I would like to open it up to the group as an open floor. If there's any specific topics that you want to go over today, please speak now. And Rob Sherwood, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know you had added the metaschema library. I don't know if you wanted to talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk. I don't know who on the call might be familiar with metaschema. Metaschema is another NIST standard written by the same folks who wrote OSCAL because they wanted to produce a schema for OSCAL that was, I guess, more complicated, more sophisticated than the existing schema languages, and they also wanted to be able to express OSCAL in, JSON, YAML, and XML. Each of those languages have their own schema language, but you need one. It's the roll up. The reason why that's important is that the OSCAL specification itself is encoded in metaschema. The authoritative representation of the OSCAL schema is encoded in metaschema. Typically, and I know that, for example, the Trussell folks did that because I used your library for some early prototyping when I was messing around with stuff. Thank you so much. Leverages the JSON schema, which is not wrong, but incomplete. And so I have been working for a little bit on implementing a library that actually directly reads and imports metaschema and then generates code in Python for an OSCAL specification and honors constraints and all that stuff. That work is ongoing, but if anyone else on the call is interested in metaschema, either in the context of Trussell or for other projects in other languages, or just generally to understand how metaschema works and how it fits into OSCAL, you can reach out to me by email or every Friday. Basically, the current team that works on metaschema, plus a couple of alums who are now at GSA, myself, and a guy I've got working with me to do the heavy lifting on the metaschema libraries, all joined to talk about metaschema and how to process it and answer questions and talk about issues and things like that. So I wanted to offer that for folks who are interested in possibly working on tooling way down at the plumbing library. Right, this would be way down below the applications, but I think that we can produce better tooling if we have better schemas underlying our tooling, and the meta schema is much more complete than JSON or schema or any of the other schemas. That's it. That's my pitch.
So Rob, just to understand, so the tool that you're building will take the OSCAL meta schema and create Python classes for each of those OSCAL model. Is that what it is doing, or something else?
That is the plan, and it's heavily inspired by the data model cogen that underlies, the compliance trestle, and the first version of my own Python library that I've created for parsing OSCAL.
Okay. Got it. Yeah, because there are some deficiencies in the data model code gen when it converts to Python classes.
Oh yeah.
Not all the schema constraints get enforced, right?
Nope.
In Python. So we have figured out few of them, and there were lots of complexities. The code that gets generated by data model code gen, we'll have to post process it to really make it working, right? So
yeah, that's right.
If we have some tool which does much better than that, then definitely that would be of interest to us.
Okay. So I'll drop the link to the repo where the development is taking place. It's come a long way over the summer. I've had somebody like a college kid, but a very smart college kid, basically working on that all summer. So we've made a lot of progress. Plenty to do, but I'm also happy to talk about it with folks offline at any length. So feel free to just ping me.
Sure. Definitely, please share the link, and we'll take a look at it and see. If that we can use that in Trestle also, because we were thinking if there is some other tool apart from data model code gen, and that we can replace to really get better output from the schemas. And also if we feel your tool is doing much better than that, then possibly in future versions we can look at that. Yeah.
Yep, that's the objective of the library, is to match the meta schema completely.
Yeah, I'll second what Vikas said, is that the data model code gen is good, but is lacking, and we had to do jumping through hoops a little bit to get it to work for us to produce the Python classes that are the underlying substrate for the rest of Trestle. And so if we can improve upon that tool, we're interested.
Okay.
All right, and with that, I just wanted to share one of our roadmap items that I think is applicable to this. So perhaps once we make a decision or talk about the project a bit more, we could capture a high-level plan on how to leverage it on this roadmap item. So I just wanted to propose that.
Okay, let me go look at that, and maybe I'll add a comment, just more so I don't forget, referencing the meta schema stuff that we've been working on.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you. All right, and then one more thing I have added here is a topic, unless anyone else has another topic. I'll pause for a second just to see. It was the grouping of properties, because we had talked about it on the compliance working group, and I wasn't sure if the information was pertinent to this group or anyone who wasn't on the previous call about the strategy, or possibly strategy to not group the properties with the new version of OSCAL. I didn't know if you wanted to talk through that a little bit, or if you believed it was valuable.
No, we can talk about that. So in OSCAL 1.1.2, based on our earlier feedback around grouping of properties, because what may happen is properties is a flat structure, right? It's just an array of props, right? But in some scenarios, we may want to group related properties together Specifically, if we look at our scenario of representing rule-related information in component definition, there are n number of rules, and each rules have more than one information to be represented, like rule ID, rule description, parameter ID, description associated with all those rules. So we need to group those properties for one rule together. Till now, what we were doing was we were using the properties remarks field to capture that grouping ID information, which was more of a hack kind of a thing, or a workaround. And based on our requirement, we suggested OSCAL a long time back to add property groupings in the OSCAL schema, and the latest version of OSCAL schema has added that capability. The latest Trestle version supports that capability in terms of all the models. The models have been updated to work with that. What we now need to do is update our code that uses the grouping grouping mechanism using the remarks field, to update that code so that it can use the property grouping field that has been introduced in the latest OSCAL version. But that would not be backward compatible, in the sense that if there are any other applications that are using Trestle SDK and they are relying on the remarks field for grouping properties, and if we update all our code and transformers to use the new group property grouping field, then those tools would get affected. Either they have to use older version of the Trestle, which still uses the which has tools which still uses the remarks field, or they need to update to the latest Trestle version. So we'll have to just keep that in mind, that once we update all our tasks and transformers to use the new feature, the property grouping feature, existing tools may be affected. Dependent tools that are using Trestle SDK, that feature of Trestle SDK might be affected. And Lou, I believe that at least for the component definition where we generate the OSCAL, we haven't yet used the group field, right, for properties. We are still using remarks, correct?
Yes, there's been, other than the fact that with the new model that groups are supported, the actual use of groups has not been employed by Trestle itself.
Exactly. So all our transformers are still using the old mechanism of using remarks.
Right. So the question really is that certainly using groups is an improvement over what we've done in the past. This is a step forward. But then the bigger question becomes, should we do that, or is there any hope that there'll be first-class support for rules and checks in OSCAL itself? And should we just hang on until that happens? Right now, I would say that the prospects for getting first-class support is it's in suspension, and there's not really much clamor for reigniting that that I've heard. But if IBM is the only one clamoring, then this is going to do nothing. We need more support than just us asking them to take that on in NIST OSCAL themselves. So given that there's going to be no movement in NIST OSCAL, that we should adopt groups. But if there is going to be movement, then the question becomes, do we want to make two non-backward compatible changes, or just one and wait for them to do that?
I believe Robert was trying to say something. Robert?
Yeah, I had a question. There's a little traffic on this, and it's something I'm interested in, but I want to understand. When you say support for rules in OSCAL, do you mean beyond the ability to define your own constraints or extend OSCAL properties? Or are you talking about some sort of dynamic like schema extension, or do you mean some rule that would somehow be useful outside the Trestle system in some sort of like code generation?
Well, again, as Vikas mentioned, we're using properties, which is a first class, OSCAL thing.
Yep.
But it's not really, properties are not required. Properties are free form.
Yeah.
We can call it, rule ID, rule description. We can call it rule X. We can call it whatever we want. I mean, they're kind of free form. There's no real structure for defining this is how rules that everybody agrees to it should be done. We picked this out. We picked these names, in Trestle, and we're using it this way.
Okay.
It'd be much nicer if there was, better support in OSCAL for rules than just property.
Okay.
And that's what we're saying. And so as Vikas is showing here, we have rule ID, rule description. We could collect these together as groups of things. But, again, that's still what I would call a second-class way of doing it instead of a first-class way where there's an actual structure called rule in OSCAL and there's an actual structure called check in OSCAL or something like that.
Right.
There isn't any. And so, we're inventing our own way of doing that using properties, which is a first-class, I shouldn't say first-class, is an acceptable way of doing it in OSCAL, but not necessarily the best way.
Yeah, it's like technically compliant to the schema, but definitely not what you.
Exactly right. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So something. It seems like there's room for improvement, but if there's not a groundswell, this is the way it's going to be. So
it's definitely something that's going to be really important as we start to do some continuous automation, compliance, validation stuff. I already kind of stumbled across that problem myself. Made up my own janky solution for my own proof of concept, but
yeah, we actually maybe year and 2 years, 1.5 years back, we had a very long, over 6 months or 1 year discussion with NIST team on how to actually model these rules in component definition, and they also came up with a sample schema and sample content and so on. But probably they didn't get much community support, right? Probably we were the only people who were asking to add that to OSCAL, and that's why that went behind the scenes on the back burner, right? They didn't pick it up. But if we feel, if you and there are other people in the community feel that's a required piece of, or that's a good to have piece of information in component definition, then probably we can push this team to maybe pick that thread up and use that whatever work that was done earlier by their team to come up with the schema and take that forward, right? So Robert, if you feel there is a requirement, I believe there was an issue there where all these discussions were captured.
yeah,
We can get that from Michaela and send that issue to you, and maybe you can comment on that and your requirements and so on, so that we can try bringing that up back again and see if that can be revived.
and I think I think we're finally sort of catching up, right? I think I'm not sure if the Defense Unicorn people, they do a lot of compliance validation in Kubernetes. They might be interested in it. I know Ryan Ahern from GSA. I saw his name on one of these meetings. I know he's working on some stuff, and it's so if we can maybe get a bigger little mob together with pitchforks and.
Yeah, well, that would definitely be helpful. And I think Vikas, maybe we should, you can post it to Robert. Maybe you can post it somewhere in the CNCF world here as well.
Yeah, in a channel, this Trestle channel, Trestle C2P channel, I can post that link, right, so that people can have access to that.
Thank you.
Yeah, but my feeling is even when we revive a Lou, right, it will not be less than 6 months or a year till that will appear in the OSCAL schema, right? So do we want to, instead of remarks, use that group field in the properties, or I believe that's a very minor change. We can still live with that for now, right? Unless we see a pressing need for it. Because this would not be backward compatible, right? So
that's to be debated. I mean,
yeah.
So I think we've used up all Jen's time. I'm sorry, Jen.
No, this is a great discussion. I know we're at time. The one thing I want to check here is, are there any action items that would require us to submit an issue? Is this something that could use an epic? Would it need to be broken down and added and scheduled, or are we still unsure?
Certainly adding group is something to be discussed. I don't think that that's finalized, what we're going to do about that. So, in the component definition for rules, it seems like a good idea.
My suggestion would be to just wait for some more time before we change that, especially because it's not backward compatible, right? So unless other dependent tools adopt the latest version of OSCAL and they are ready to update their piece of code to, because if they're parsing this, right, then they will have to update their piece of code also, right?
Yep.
All right, sounds good. I think then we can wait for community input if that's something that's desired. Okay, well, like I said, we're at the end of our time. Thank you everyone for joining. It was a great discussion, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
Jen.
you. Thanks. Bye-bye.